and Amelia. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hello, hello.
So just a quick introduction. It's Alan. I know you through Next Level University. Amelia, I met through Alan, through Evolve Venture. And the two of you together are doing the Conscious Couple podcast, or now the We.
The We.
So there's we made it complicated so no one could figure it out. So the We is the name of our business. And you can see here, there's the masculine and the feminine. And it's a pyramid. And so the we is the combination of the me. So if you work on yourself and she works on herself, the we is sort of the whole is greater than the sum of its parts type of thing. The Conscious Couples podcast is one aspect of the we. The we is a business that we created together to help couples reach their potential.
Go together, not apart.
I like that. Well, I was thinking about this before we got on with the idea of consciousness. Especially before you even get to the couples, talking about the individual. I think when people think of consciousness, the first thing that comes to mind is unconscious means on the floor, passed out, not responding. And conscious means you're awake, you're alert, you're doing things. But it's very possible, especially nowadays, that people are unconsciously conscious, especially in the context of relationships. Like they're there, but they're not there. They're missing signals. They're not hearing things. So I'm curious what if you have like a working definition of what it means to be conscious on an individual level and then translating that up into a relationship level.
Yeah. To me, what it means to be conscious in an individual level is you have the ability to reflect on what it is in real time you're saying and log that to a future potentiality or what you want to do in the future. And then, so if you are taking a moment to reflect and then you take that reflection and then input 1% improvement to what you want to do in the future, you take that and then bring that in from the me to the we. That's essentially what you can do in a relationship too. Going deep real fast.
For anyone out there watching or listening, this is the first time Amelia and I have ever been in this new studio. 2 or 3 weekends ago, we spent all day. Is this an explicit show? Am I able to swear on this show?
Swear if you like. It's all good.
Mike, all fucking day.
And just for context, anyone listening, we're not project people. We're like all about these conversations, helping people grow together, not apart. Projects, in-house projects is not the top love language.
So this was the first time we've ever used a nail gun together.
It's called a Brad gun.
Okay, what is it called?
It's a Brad gun. No,
we don't know who Brad is. I don't know who Brad is, but I don't like him. It's a whole story, but ultimately, to answer your question, Mike, the conscious couples idea comes from the conscious individuals. One of the reasons why we wanted to be here is because when you interviewed me, I think I've been on your show 2 times. You do a lot of metacog.
Too much, yeah.
So much. It's great. This is, and we're going to try to keep it tangible here today. But Mike, I love that. I told her that.
Yeah.
And I said, he loves metacog. He loves thinking about his thinking, about his thinking, about his thinking, which can be exhausting for other people.
Yeah.
So the adaptive men in the room,
awesome.
Thinking about your thinking is the opposite of being unconscious. And so can you become a conscious, contemplative individual where you're constantly contemplating? We have a cat named Tauriel, and she is endlessly fascinated with our tub and our shower. And she's always trying to figure things out. You can watch her thinking. It's unbelievable. And I often joke and I say, Tauriel, our cat, is contemplating more than some people. And so what we do at the Conscious Couples podcast is we take the autopilot off and we help couples and individuals realize you're running these patterns. You don't realize you're running these patterns, and they're quite frankly creating issues in your relationship. And she calls them cycles. And if you keep running these same cycles, you're going to get, I think of everything in formulas.
Yeah.
Love has a formula. Health has a formula. Wealth has a formula. And if you're running these unconscious formulas wrong, you're basically going to get bad results and then blame the world, when in reality, you think inaccurately about yourself, others, and the world. And so we can get into that.
Facts, which is why that definition that I provided, if you're not self-reflecting on what you're thinking about, how can you improve the future? Not only on an individual level, but also on a conscious couples level, right? So it's being able to take what you learn and apply that in the future that I think makes conscious couples a little different.
Yeah, it's iterating on a process and trying to get it improve it each time. But I think the first barrier to entry there is getting past your own cycles, identifying them to begin with, starting off with that. And then you might see my cat's tail flash across the camera.
Hey, we are pro cats here.
flexing my
Thank you.
wiggle.
Yeah, getting people to lower their ego, their defense, just to even notice the cycle in the first place. That's a to swear. Yeah, it's a bitch in itself. Trying to get people to sit down for long enough to let their ego, let their defensiveness and everything calm down enough to identify, like, oh, there's something actually wrong with this behavior here, or there's something wrong with this way of thinking, and it's actually maybe drawing a connection to like, oh, I was the cause of this. I was the getting out of that victim mindset and getting more into a sense of control and sense of purpose and being able to, like you said, create the proper equation to try to figure things out. But I think, where do you start with that, especially with people nowadays being so unconscious via things like cell phone usage, social media, everything and anything we can to try to distract us from ourselves. We're so externally focused now, rather than trying to acknowledge, like, what's even going on here, what's going on up in here, what's going on back here.
I love that. I love that you mentioned the back here and then the up here, prefrontal cortex, the
Absolutely.
back here of the subconscious and unconscious. I recently researched this. 2 hours and 38 minutes is the average Netflix time per day.
Rookie numbers.
That's the average. Those are rookie numbers in this racket. I mean, obviously, I'm up to 8 hours a day personally, so I'm trying to
Of course.
No, but ultimately, the problem with Netflix, and again, I have Netflix and we enjoy Netflix too, but the problem with Netflix is you're simulating achievement.
Mm-hmm.
These characters, so there's no feedback on self. So you're watching Netflix, your favorite show or your favorite movies, I guess it's shows statistically nowadays, and you're simulating mental stimulation and emotions without actually achieving anything.
Mm-hmm.
So you're watching these characters go through these adversities, and they're growing and they're contributing and they're doing things and they're developing skills. But you get off the couch after watching Netflix and you are no different. You didn't actually do anything. You didn't necessarily grow. And so when you said nowadays the mind-numbing stuff, the world is increasingly making it easy to stay on autopilot.
Yeah.
You can get groceries delivered. You can shop on Amazon at the click of a button. It comes to your door in a day, in some cases 2 hours, because we have a fulfillment center near us. You can listen to podcasts that are about true crime or whatever the big podcasts are. You can watch trials. There's so much that you can escape with.
Mm-hmm.
And all of us, I think, are losing the ability to sit in a dark room by ourselves and contemplate our existence. And her and I have a journaling habit. And when we joke, we say, I dare you to go a full 2 weeks without journaling, without having a full-on panic attack. And the reason I'm joking about that is because her and I, without books and without our journals and without each other and deep conversations, we feel like we go on autopilot again so quickly. And we need this right here, what we're doing right now. We need this. The setup was atrocious. We were late. That's on us. Thank you for being gracious. So we don't need that, but we need this. And I think that it's a deep need that people are craving, but unfortunately they're escaping. And so the first step is becoming aware of how much you're using Netflix, or how much you're on Instagram, or how much you're on YouTube. That's a big one. But I would love to hear her take as well.
Yeah, actually, something that comes to mind when you ask that, Mike, is a story of one of our relationship talks coaching clients. And just fun fact that I had learned the word for when your partner is just so distracted with their devices that it's actually taking away from them being conscious, which I believe is called dubbing. I don't know if either of you guys have heard of that, but now there's an actual word. And so, like, Mike, I know when you and I had spoke in our interview around some of the common themes that conscious couples or people that we work with, that we find, one of them is obviously communication and money, some of that stuff, but the tech issues of like tech being in the way of the communication and the connection and being conscious in the relationship has like alarmingly started to jump up. And so the story was you and I's clients, where when we initially started working with them, this was a married couple who was like on the brink of divorce, and they had come into a relationship talks call. And Mike, do you remember when I had shared with you, this one guy was sitting on, he was in the screen, but he was like off and he wouldn't. Yeah. Okay. So it was
is like me now.
It was that guy. And, you know, he reminds me of someone who he has gone from, holy crap, someone who is unconsciously just existing in his relationship. Now his partner was hyper growth oriented, super conscious female. And she was the one that obviously was like, hey, what about this RTC thing? And he started off screen and then eventually over time started to, really get in. And now he's like so excited for RTC. But what we found was in that whole RTC session, in the long-term relationship that we had working with them as clients, we had helped him transition from that unconscious pattern to the conscious, but we had acknowledged that without courage, vulnerability, and humility, we're not going to be breaking any cycles here, because it was what he was bringing into the relationship of his unconscious patterning that actually was creating some of these spin-off challenges in the relationship. And so just to your question, that's immediately the story that I had. And then the triad that we use all the time with couples, which is, if you have the courage to show up and be on camera and talk about really what are those cycles that are impacting your relationship, you have the humility to kind of say, I am not holier than thou. We all need help. We all are bringing in our own stuff in relationships. And then the vulnerability to communicate, with your partner and with other people about like, I have my own cycles, I have my own baggage, and I'm bringing that into this relationship. I don't mean to. And I want to learn how I can break those. That's what came to mind.
He was falling down the rabbit hole of politics constantly.
Yeah. Twitter.
Conspiracy theories and politics, especially during COVID. This is a Canadian couple, and Canada went kind of a bit off the rails during the COVID time, and he just could not get off the politics and the conspiracy theory stuff. And I said, brother, because we have a hybrid model where I'll coach the man and she coaches the woman. And then we do a 4-person session as well. That's pretty awesome. And I said, brother, you got to get off your phone. Like, you got to become present in your own life. Listen, Canada might be conspirizing against you, but I'll tell you what, your relationship's going to fail if you're more worried about that than your own wife.
And he was going there, obviously, because he was getting away from his own cycles, Mike. Exactly. And so eventually he started to really acknowledge that, and you were able to speak mano y mano to him, which apparently when I spoke to him, it like went off.
She doesn't know how to circumvent the male ego yet.
She's working on it.
Yeah.
Hey, that's not fair.
No, you're working on it.
Yeah.
That's
a great
though,
question.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, within that, I think there's also an underlying, and maybe it's within the humility statement, or maybe the courage, but it's like an underlying point that we don't really talk about much in personal growth and development, is that like growing is painful. Like changing cycles is painful.
Of course.
Like pushing your comfort zone, it is painful. And the pain comes in so many different ways. It's not always like, oh, I can handle some physical pain. Like, yeah, try up here. Oh, yeah. Totally different story. Mm-hmm. And I say this to lots of people I'm working with myself. I got friends and family who are trying to change habits. It's like, if you're, I have one guy I'm talking to who I'm trying to get him to just stop taking his phone to bed, because he's going to sleep too late. Then he's feeling like crap the next day because he feels like crap. He needs to calm himself down and numb out from the pain of having a crappy day, phone in bed, and he just repeats. And I'm having just encouraging, like, start charging your phone in your kitchen.
Nice.
But expect the first week to suck.
Yeah. 100%.
Like, walk in there saying like you're gonna get all sorts of clever, manipulative like things your brain's gonna start generating to convince you why it's important to get up out of bed and go get your phone right now. Mm-hmm. And you have to just write it on the wall somewhere like, no phone in bed. No, and it sounds like Alan does this. Just from her looking at you. But if it's causing problems in your life, if you can't modulate it in a healthy way, you have to basically say, this is going to be changing something, and I'm going to get some very like unique types of discomfort and pain. It's essentially like a grieving process in a nutshell. But a lot of people walk into it saying like, oh, I'm going to start going to the gym, it's going to be great. And then like day 2, when you can barely walk because you're so sore you haven't worked in years, like, I never want to do this again. It's like, this is just day 1, day 2.
Yeah.
But understanding that like this type of discomfort and pain is gonna show up in lots of different ways, and you have to be willing to ride that storm out too.
Mm-hmm. You have to be willing. There's your. We are pro cat here, so we're good. The reason she was looking at me is because when I can't sleep at night, I'll go listen to books.
Yeah.
And I'll put Audible on a sleep timer. But she had the brilliant idea. We'll share this with if any couple wants to be more connected. Mm-hmm. We have a charging station. It's on the 2nd floor of our home. We are really, I never realized we were so good at this. You better than me. But we are really good about our devices. Like her and I will talk, it'll be 8:15 at night, and she'll have her phone downstairs because she tracks her stats and her macros. And it'll be like, sweetheart, no devices downstairs. Mm-hmm. When we have AirPods in, because we're always learning books, different podcasts, whatever, it's, are we connecting or are we learning? Yeah. And we'll say that. And that means basically, let's put our devices away and also let's put our cats away.
She keeps. I have to figure out how to like put it somewhere where she can't just be in front of the camera.
Brother,
Love bomb.
we
You
know
know
the
the
deal.
love bomb of
Yeah, it's
cats.
called a love bomb. Tauriel is the favorite. She loves to be in front of the camera with her tail, shows her butt. It is what it is.
Yep.
But ultimately, the device hygiene is what we call it, not a sexy
I
term.
like that.
I have no rings, no dings, no bings, no vibrations. Her phone does not vibrate. Her phone is right here.
Mhm.
It will never ring or vibrate.
Hmm.
And my phone's right over there because we both have a lot of work. We're in the middle of our day. But in the evening, we don't do that, man. Our phones are up here until I can't sleep, and then I go up and I get my Audible going. But seriously, we've done a really good job of that. And I think that the number one causes of divorce, if you look at it statistically, you're looking at money, children, and sex.
Communication
Communication
is number one.
I think it's going to be technology.
Tech's going to jump up like crazy. Like I said, it's already actually to the stats, it's communication, finances, then the sexual stuff. And then tech has actually in the last year jumped up like 4 rings.
I think it's going to be
that's going to come up insane. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
And if you look at the stats of devices on planet Earth, it's insane. Like everyone research this. Google, ChatGPT, the exponential curve is insane. If you go from 2000 to 2025, the amount of internet connected devices has skyrocketed to an alarming extent. We have like 30 internet connected devices in this house. There's only 2 of us.
Yeah. Internet of Things.
We're both techies, right? But
Yeah.
if we're not careful, we have to be, we have 40 clients between the 2 of us, and they're always on WhatsApp, and we have communities. You're in one of our fitness communities, my fitness community. And it's awesome. But we have to be very careful about if I'm talking to Mike at 9:00 at night instead of my beautiful girlfriend and future wife, we're in trouble, right? I have to prioritize her over you. And I think that couples are getting really bad at that because the windows of opportunity to distraction are right here now. It used to have to be a knock at the door or a ring of the phone. You remember dial-up back in the day. How old are you? I'm 36. Yeah, AOL, exactly. And you remember actual phone numbers? 508-278-5646. Like, that's my buddy Kiki. Hopefully his parents took that off the line because people are going to call him now. But the point is there's none of that anymore. Now anyone can reach you at any time. And I have people, and I've talked to her about this behind the scenes, we have clients and community members that, I'm not kidding, if I message this person on Instagram, I'm going 3 years straight. I'll keep it anonymous. If I message her on Instagram right now, she'll get back to me within 3 Mississippi. For 3 years straight, she's never missed. And I adore this person. I want to help this person, but I'm not going to lie. If she ever coaches with me, the first call is going to be get off Instagram.
Yeah.
Because you can't be successful in life and business and in your intimate relationship if you're answering Alan Lazaros within 3 milliseconds for the last 3 years. It's immediate. You know how you Instagram someone DM and it says seen immediately?
Yep.
That's a tell.
Yeah.
You'll never get that from us. You're not going to Instagram me, Mike, and then have it seen right away unless I'm already on there batching my content, right? So
I think it's a bigger conversation around impulse control and how, because of the availability bias, like there's so little impulse control within the context of an individual, not to mention as you extend it into the relationship, there's so little impulse control nowadays at an exponential rate. And obviously we can paint the technology as the villain, but truth be told, from my perspective, we are the issue. And it's that our addictions, it's our consumption, it's our bypassing of sitting in the discomfort and the emotions that we have, right? Mike, you and I had talked about that, and not partnering with pain to the original sentiment there. Like, I think that that's a really big issue and increasing. And we see that in our clients.
Yeah, I think it's mostly the internet's fault.
It's mostly the robots that will eventually exist.
It's mostly fault. AI. Yeah. No, ultimately it's us.
Yeah.
Right. It's just like people blaming McDonald's. Listen,
no
McDonald's doesn't throw it
in your face.
Yeah, and here's the truth too. Unless you take ownership for it, you can't do anything about it. Yes, of course, these challenges are harder than they used to be. We do, like Benjamin Franklin, I read his autobiography. You probably have too if you love Metacom.
I haven't yet, but I'm putting my list of books to get.
You're going to love it, man. He was the OG personal development guy.
He was.
Yeah,
and habit tracking or virtue tracking.
Virtue tracking.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I've heard of that.
Unbelievable. So he didn't have Instagram, man. He didn't have all this stuff on the internet. He didn't have click, distraction. So it was easier for him in some ways, but he also didn't have dentists and other stuff. Like, I think he had dentists. So certain things are easier and certain things are harder. And Benny Franks had it better.
Yeah.
I knew you'd
Penny
laugh at that,
Franks.
maybe.
That just reminded me too. We did a relationship talks event on specific. Was it on specifically digital defense and digital technology, or did we weave that
Device
in?
hygiene.
I think we brought it in because we knew that people weren't ready to talk about what we're talking about, Mike.
Oh,
like
we
the
were going to
community-
talk about pornography.
We were
and
going
like
to talk about
the
social digital monogamy.
digital monogamy.
Yes,
that
that's
was
what
it.
was.
Digital monogamy. That's another big one, dude.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
But anyways,
porn free over 4 years for me.
Same.
Nice, good for you,
Whoop, whoop.
brother. When I found out how important that was to her, game done. I know that I'm in the statistical abnormal population for men with that.
Mhm.
I don't know how women are dealing with this because
They're reading books instead.
yeah, literotica. You're absolutely right. They're literotica. But at the end of the day, like, channel that energy towards your partner.
Yeah.
Because that's constructive. It's just like the Netflix thing, right? Yes, watch Netflix, but also build your own business.
There's a problem in there with most people not understanding how your general motivation circuitry works.
Yeah.
And understanding that you may need to take a few hits along the way of, so for example, your day-to-day as a guy, I'm talking about adaptive men here, as a guy, your day-to-day sexual vitality, like it's gonna be there easily, but it might not always be received well depending on circumstances. She might be in, down part, part of her menstrual cycle, having a not a great time, kids are nagging, tough part in their career, something happened, whatever it means, and it's still there. It's still like, I can't help but be horny, even though I'm like stressed and depressed and all that stuff. And it's very easy, I think, for our brains to basically make the connection to say, oh, well, I can't get it here, but I can get it over here. Here's porn. It's in my pocket. Or I can get some kind of stress release here. But being willing, in my opinion, to take those small hits of like, not tonight. It's just like, okay, it's not me. It's just a bad timing. But if I'm patient and wait, and then maybe sometime next week or later in the week, whatever it is, you start to really develop this relationship, ideally with your partner, where you basically say, I respect it. I understand it. I'm not gonna misuse this energy. I'm just gonna try to channel it elsewhere in a productive way, still within the confines of the relationship. I'm doing some solo work in the dark. Who knows? But whatever it may be, it's just like, don't think about like Instagram thirst traps, porn. I think internet traffic right now, I think globally, it's like 30% of it is pornography.
Oh, it's brutal.
It's
so bad.
And it just speaks volumes to the fact that this is like a massive energetic force of human nature that is not being channeled effectively.
100%.
Yeah.
And I can speak on behalf of women. That's a huge concern of women because where are the Sigma men? Where are those quote unquote alpha men? And I know that can be toxic communication, but like a lot of women are, and I can say this on behalf of clients as well that I've spoken about, like are really concerned about like how not controlled, if you will, men are and how that is going to impact things down the line. And so like I've spoken to a lot of women that have gone in a different direction of sexuality even because of some of those implications.
At very least, for any men or women listeners, at very least, if you're in a relationship, I hope you aspire for it to be a conscious couple. Have the conversation.
Yeah.
You have to have the conversation. Her and I didn't know this back then because I was good at business, man. I didn't understand how to do this. I just said, don't screw this up the whole time. And I think I did a pretty good job, all things considered. But dude, relationships for me, I'm an engineer. Relationships for me never came easy. I never understood why they didn't work. They seemed so goddamn irrational. And when I met her, I was like, this one I'm doing right, no matter what. Like whatever it takes. I'm never going to lie, nothing, no embellishment, nothing. Just don't screw this up, Alan. Just don't screw this up, Alan. Just don't screw this up, Alan. And we had some of those early conversations about all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's really changed. We created our own rule book.
Yeah.
For the we. No one else even has to know it. As a matter of fact, half of it we don't even want to share. We just feel like we want to help people. And quite frankly, brother, our relationship's way better behind the scenes than this. Welcome to the, you know what I mean? That's why I like getting her laughing, because I always have her laughing off air. But at the end of the day, you got to have those conversations. Bring the unconscious conscious. Have the courage to have those conversations with your partner, so that you guys can set the guidelines for your relationship moving forward, because that has been such a game changer for us. And when we do have relationship talks coaching with clients, we realize, and again, this is, I try to suspend my judgment of this. We'll get off sometimes and be like, I can't believe that's the first time they talked about money.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
It's like, we're adulting, right? How old are we? And again, I don't want to be judgmental, but I also, there has to be some accountability of, we got to grow up and talk about money.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and within that too, it's what's difficult to people. I think for people to recognize is that when you get into those tense situations, those tough conversations in the relationship, if your nervous system is not really well developed, if your ego is still extremely potent, you have a lot of undigested traumatic experiences, you're gonna, like you said a second ago, how old are we? Like you're gonna have an emotional regression, like a psychological age regression in the moment.
Facts.
You'll be a 40, 45, 50-year-old man, and all of a sudden, like, why did we spend so much this month? Suddenly you're a 10-year-old. And you're back in the house with your mom yelling at you for spending your piggy bank money again. And then you go unconscious. And there it is again, like versus the consciousness thing.
Yeah.
And having people understand that, like, it's going to take, if you're in a long-term committed relationship, you might have to practice what it looks like to have these conversations and understand what it's going to look like. Like we might get to a point where it just gets too heated and one of us has to like hit the button to say like, okay, pause. Mm-hmm. Like my emotions, my feelings are involuntarily spiking. My hormones are rising. My blood pressure is rising. I can't focus properly. I can't really remember what you just said. Let's just go for like a walk separately for 10, 15 minutes and then come back.
She does that so well.
So important.
She does that so well. I'll escalate sometimes and it gets to a certain decibel level because I grew up in an environment where, let's just say, high level yelling was frequent. Mm-hmm. My mom and stepdad did not get along, and that's a polite way to put it on a public medium.
For lack of better
anger
words.
Was the common language.
Yeah, for lack of better words, the central nervous system was probably sitting at like a 6 or 7 years old, just for context.
Yeah. And so I'll get a little bit more higher decibel level. We've never yelled, we've never stormed out, we've never slammed a door, we've nothing. Which is unbelievable because when we first got together, same. It's mostly you. Let's be honest. I will take 30% of the credit. We 80-20 things. I know, right? So she told me when we first got together, we're never going to fight. And I'm like, we already
pick his jaw off the floor.
I know. And I'm like, we're going to be together forever. Like, I'm not going to be perfect. I can promise you that. Right? We've never fought. But now I figured out she has the cheat code. What you just said, the moment things get a little too much, she's like, okay, you're getting a little, and what's going on with
what's going on back here?
She'll say, what's up with the forehead? You know? And that's, one time I kid you not, I went and sat on the floor. Because I'm like 6'2", right? And I'll get, and she's like, Alan?
And I'm 5'3",
and I'm like,
so
I'm so sorry. And I just go sit on the floor. She's like, thank you.
Thank you so much. I feel safe.
We finished the conversation. It was so wonderful.
When we work with couples too, one of the things that immediately right off the bat, Mike, we lock in who's the most emotionally developed and emotionally regulated one.
Which is obviously me.
More often than not, it tends to be the woman, right? Because of some of the things that you and I have talked about. But why that matters is because how I'm looking at, and we did this with a couple recently, the one from K-Pod, what does safety look like? That is like one of our first conversations that we have with couples. What does safety look like? What does it feel like? Mm-hmm. How do you define safety? And more often than not, two different people, A, haven't even thought about that or defined that for themselves, or B, this is the first time they've ever talked about safety within the confines and the context of the relationship, or C, has had the permission to examine it in a non-judgmental space.
And not just physical safety, but psychological safety. Yeah. So she's said things to me in the past where she's like, well, I didn't feel super protected there. And one example, my mom and sister were in a fight and I kind of neglected her and went to try to tend to them. And she had the courage to actually talk to me about that, of I didn't feel super protected there. Psychologically safe and physically safe. So Michael, I'm sorry. All right, so these fundamentals, when you come down to couples, and I'm as blown away by this is like your second nature, because she's started doing therapy when she was 12. The inner game has always made sense to her. Mm-hmm. And I've learned so much on this couples conscious couples journey. It'd be nice if I could speak. it comes down to the unsexy fundamentals. Ready?
Yeah.
Digital hygiene, emotional regulation, huge. If you don't have individual emotional regulation, your relationship is screwed by default. Start there, right? True or false? You can't, right?
Yeah.
Okay. If she didn't have amazing emotional regulation, we would have ended up fighting.
Mhm.
And we would have ended up saying something we wish we hadn't. I would have, for sure. And then this is another one. Will control, willpower. I'm reading Willpower in book club right now. Self-control. If you have a partner who is an emotional train wreck, who cannot self-regulate or self-control their decision-making, you can't have an amazing relationship.
Yeah.
The whole is greater than the sum of its parts, but the parts still matter, right? The masculine and the feminine. And so if you're both reverting to a 10-year-old version of yourself and you can't impulse control with food or digital hygiene or whatever, you got to work on those base things that are so unsexy. And if you go on YouTube today, you're going to see all this self-discipline doesn't work and all these clickbaity titles with these people who preach self-love but have tons of plastic surgery. And it's so unfortunate, brother, because these conversations are the most valuable but the least sexy.
Mm-hmm. I think it's something we're losing too generationally, that even I guess we're this next generation of kids coming through are the first cell phone internet generation. And I was thinking earlier about like emotional regulation and just like you said, mentioned about like sitting through the pain of something. I could still remember, like I think it was like 10th grade. I had finally mustered up the balls to tell a girl I really liked her, and she was like, "Yeah, I like you as a friend," and just gut wrenching. Like, no, damn it, they're gonna be my girlfriend. But I had nowhere to go but to sit with it.
Yeah.
And it was a really powerful learning experience, because now if I go up to a girl, I'm like, "Hey, cut it out." Like, okay, cool, moving on, because I've been through it.
Yeah.
Versus nowadays, do you like me? No. Okay. Off to porn, off to Minecraft, off to whatever, like Netflix, what we can do. And just, you don't have to sit with it. So you never actually acclimate to it and learn what it feels like to go through a difficult experience. And even then the emotional self-regulation thing, there is something kind of nested in there. We don't have time to go through it today probably, but the idea that we're not, a lot of new parents, I would wager generationally, stemming back pretty far, have not been co-regulating their children effectively, which is pretty much, as far as I understand, like the basis of self-regulation.
Facts.
She will talk all day about that.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, a lot of the generations, our millennials and Gen Xers, are experiencing the byproduct of that lack of co-regulation. I just had someone in our family just have a baby, and it's so interesting to see how some of the things that babies need for co-regulation of their central nervous system, right? Because babies, when they first come into the world, they're not a developed 25-year-old. They don't know how to self-soothe. They do not know how to meet their emotional needs. And yes, babies have emotional needs. I say that because there's been people who are like, wait, babies don't just cry because they want attention. It's like, no. Like, that's the only form of communication that they have. Nonverbal, outside of nonverbal.
Some adults use that too.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, but the millennials and the Gen Xers and obviously the boomers, I say that with all the love in the world because I have boomer clients, like they never were given that co-regulation. It was just pull your bootstraps up, stop crying, the messages, rub some dirt in it, like just nonstop messages to suppress whatever emotion arises in your physiological state, instead of actually recognizing how the physiological sensations are impacted by the psychology that we have and how that's all rooted in neuroscience. And it now more than ever is a call to parents, even parents that we've had and communicated with, to really be mindful of the co-regulation that is necessary and to model that, because you can't just talk about it with your kids. You actually have to demonstrate that in real time. So, I was having a conversation with a client. She has an 18-year-old that just graduated, and we were talking about this and just what it means to be a conscious parent, even thinking about that from that lens. She's been a client of ours. It's like, holy shit, he's doing so much better in this world in comparison to his peers.
Yeah, for sure.
Because of the fact that she's a conscious parent and actually is willing to give her central nervous system to him even as an 18-year-old, because he's still in his brain development phases, which really do need that baseline sense of security from a central nervous system standpoint. So
I get to coach him. His name is Micaiah.
Yeah.
Is it Micaiah you're talking about? Yeah. Awesome kid.
Yeah.
Awesome kid. Real quick, Mike, how are we doing on time? Because I actually have a
About
question
4
that
minutes.
4 minutes? Okay.
Yeah,
And I don't want to take the interview from you, but I also,
all good.
the name of this is Adaptive Men. My
Mhm.
question would be, Amelia, what's the biggest misunderstanding that men have about women that
It's actually one of the questions I had. I forgot to get to. Yeah, good one.
perfect. Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
because I actually want to know too.
Say the question again.
What is the biggest misunderstanding that men today have that we just don't get about women?
Oh
And maybe vice versa too, if we have time.
yeah, I would love that too. Okay, one of the things that I'm giggling because from my perspective, it seems so obvious, but it reminds me of the high school conundrum that men face that I've heard from a lot of male clients, which is men think that women want really tough men, really very masculine men, right? Like one of the
Stretching,
right. Over there. Right. And
All I can picture is Gaston from Beauty and the Beast. You know?
yeah.
You mean you don't like him? I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But what I think, is actually the reality is that is what a female who isn't concerned about the long term, who just maybe wants that status and significance, that's a short term thing. What women really want from men is psychological safety, emotional protection, like that sense of teamwork that when you put a male in that standpoint of, I just want your ego, I just want you to be this big, strong, masculine man because I'm this victim, it actually disconnects and you can't have the same level of teamwork that from a safe male you can have so much more. So the sum of the parts is greater, whatever that saying is.
The whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
But yeah, women, that is something that comes off so much and so often. And I wish more men had models. We had spoken about this, Mike, about there's no models for men to model that safety, that healthy, quote unquote, masculinity. And there's this sense of, quote unquote, grieving and loss that comes if you were to actually be in your own safe energy.
The first time I cried in front of her because my eggs were overcooked. I'm joking. I'm obviously kidding. No, but we were actually having eggs. That's what made me think of that joke. We were at her parents' place at the time. This is 6 years ago, coming up on 6 years ago. And we were fairly new. I was going on a limb with this crying that early.
Oh,
and can you share what that was like for you?
Yeah, so we were in my bedroom. We weren't doing anything.
No, we were in the kitchen at Rim.
Oh, no.
Yeah. I think you might be thinking of a different time.
Okay, well, there might be two times.
Okay, that's
because I have one. Okay,
tell the one that was so hard for you to.
Yeah, that one was in my bedroom.
Okay,
yeah,
fair.
We weren't doing anything for anyone that's listening where their minds are jumping, but we used to do like 6-hour check-ins, and we were actually having a check-in at that time, and something had come up where Alan was sharing vulnerably, and then he started crying, and literally my physiology, because I've been wired to seek out toxic men, I literally was so turned off in that moment. And I talk about it openly now. But again, that's a great example of like, I had been wired to want that short term, quote unquote, big bravado man. And then all of a sudden this like big man that's crying where like he's crying like that doesn't make sense.
It was an ugly cry in her defense.
No,
I know, I'm joking. I'm obviously joking.
But in real time, I had this like metacog going on and I was like, you want this safe man. Then like, so why are we turned off? And like, I had to kind of go through all of that without letting him know, of course. But I
found out later.
I had these two options essentially, like say this guy ain't mine because he cries, which is literally adding to the toxicity of the narrative and not creating a psychologically safe space, which I then knew that was what I had been conditioned as a female to quote unquote play into, or I can actually honor the fact that my central nervous system craves safety and craves this safe man who has the capacity to be a wholehearted man and actually cry. And so I chose obviously the latter, and thank goodness, because now we're here. But that's a great example of, you know, had I chosen opposite, I would have been a part of that problem of female wants this, but in reality, they really do deeply want that safeness.
Yeah. And for any women that might be out there listening too, you might have to work through that just because it doesn't feel safe yet. And remember, you got to understand, if you want an emotionally unavailable man who doesn't cry, you got to understand what you're going to get.
The implications of
You're
that.
going to get what you get. And there's pros and cons to everything, right? So at the end of the day, I didn't even know that she had to work through that.
Yeah.
She worked through it on her own accord, and then we were still connected as hell. And if I had known, would I have had the courage to cry? That's a conundrum right there, but we don't have time for that.
That's for next episode.
Yeah.
I know you two have to get going. Thank you so much for the time. This is awesome for your first episode of the We. Where can we find the content?
Oh, thank you, Mike, for having us. We really appreciate it. This has been awesome.
Again sometime.
Thank you for dealing with our tech issues before. I always joke. I always say our relationship behind the scenes is so much better than this because as business partners, it's get it together. Why didn't you do this? What about the volume? Yeah, exactly. But thank you. So where can you find us? TheWeUniversity.com, spelled just like it sounds. Right. Conscious Couples Podcast, the Conscious Couples Podcast. There is apparently a couple, our nemesis, I'm joking, we don't know them, with Conscious Couples Podcast. So the Conscious Couples Podcast, the one and only Conscious Couples Podcast. The best. The best one and only, one and only of all time. And also you can, at this point, ChatGPT or Google our name, and as pretentious as this will sound, we will come up on everything. And Amelia Smith, Alan Lazaros, and please reach out. Instagram is probably the best way to get a hold of us via DM.
Yep, Evolve with Amelia.
And Alazaros88, ALAZAROS 88. And Mike, thank you again.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you so much for this. This was awesome.
Yeah,
thank you.
This was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.